inserts his thigh beneath his opponent's center of gravity. Then he lifts his thigh while still pulling forward and throws his opponent over his hip and onto the mat.
Shredding it. Woo!
The throw works just like a crowbar, where your leg is the lever and your hip is the fulcrum. The trick is positioning your body in just the right place. If you're just an inch off the placement of your thigh and hip, the amount of energy needed to throw an opponent can more than double. But performed correctly, Uchimata requires almost no energy, yet it can deliver up to 5,000 pounds of force. If it weren't for the mat, a throw like Uchimata would be enough to cause serious injury or even paralysis.
1, 2, yes! Does it.
Fast learner.
That's a great move if you can get it. If you can remember all the things you got to do and throw your leg back and twerk the right way, I mean, it's really impressive. The guy goes right over.
This throw could get us through the standing phase of a judo match. But we haven't even begun to learn the ground fighting techniques that will help us take on a judo champ.
To do that, we're headed for a crash course in the down and dirty chokes used by the samurai to kill on the battlefield. We're exploring the back streets of Tokyo in search of a one-of-a-kind institution, the Kodo Gakusha Judo Boarding School. Graduates of the school have won 12 world championships.
Bill and I are hoping they can teach us a few dominant ground techniques to help us in our fight. And just like in MMA, groundwork is key. Chokes, pins, and joint locks. Brutal moves derived directly from the killing art of samurai jiu-jitsu. Samurai training began at home, usually around age 5. It focused on the traditional weapons of the sword and the bow, as well as jiu-jitsu. But the sons of wealthy families were sent to special academies, called ryus, to master the warfare arts that would define their lives. At the ryus, there was one main thing on the curriculum: battle. This same tradition is alive today at Kodo Gakusha Boarding School.
What should we watch out for with Sensei?
Well, he's a pretty strict guy, and he likes to read a rough practice, so I'll be ready to work.
The opening exercises confirmed that these guys meant business.
Keep your head low and your butt down. There's snipers in those trees. Oh yeah.
Exercises like these are designed to improve muscle strength, loosen up tight joints, and increase flexibility. 3 critical components necessary to survive the hours of punishment judokas endure.
I dare anyone to come try this for a couple hours and say it's not hard work. I've been on professional football fields and big wrestling rings. I need a warm-up for this warm-up.
He says that Bill probably can't pin him.
Bill, you said you can't pin him. That sounds like a challenge.
It's clamming up on me, coach. The principles of judo are a lot different than wrestling. It's basically everything that you were taught not to do in wrestling, you do in judo. A lot of the bad habits, like high hips and laying on your back, that's perfect technique in judo. So it's very hard to make that transition. I think Jason's having an easier time because he has a jiu-jitsu background.
My Brazilian jiu-jitsu training is coming in handy. The way I use my body and many of the throws and locks are very similar. It's easy to see that judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu evolved from the same true samurai warfare. But in Japan, the split between judo and jiu-jitsu began with the end of the samurai.
In 1852, the arrival of Commodore Perry's steamships confronted the Japanese with the vastly superior naval technology of the West. It became clear that the fighting style of the samurai couldn't survive the modern world. The point was made brutally clear during the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, when an army of 30,000 samurai faced off against the Western-trained army of the Emperor Meiji. Nearly every one of the samurai was killed.
With the end of the samurai, jiu-jitsu fell out of favor in Japan, to be replaced by the more scientific judo. But old-school jiu-jitsu didn't vanish entirely. It survived in a few isolated dojos and in other parts of the world where samurai and their descendants settled. Especially Brazil, where the Gracie family was taught jiu-jitsu from a Japanese immigrant and turned the art into one of the foundations of modern MMA.
And in MMA, one of the most famous techniques is called ground and pound. It's all about getting dominant position, just like on the battlefield or the pin in judo.
At the school, we warmed up by getting into and trying to get out of various pins.
There you go.
Even though he's much smaller than me, he uses his dominant position and counterweight of his legs to keep me on my back. This kind of groundwork is incredibly grueling.
You ever see when a T-Rex grabs a human being by the top half and their legs are swinging out? That's what Jason looked like just now.
Oh, that was a lot of work to get to the back. Bill, it's your turn.
This guy is giving a clinic in the physics of judo. No matter what I do, my brute strength isn't enough to overcome the advantage this guy has by using his legs as a lever to keep me down.
He's very strong for a little guy.
Look at the size difference, though. He's as thick as Bill's leg.
Very strong, though. It's all about leverage. You got to take the thought of strength out of judo. It just doesn't translate.
Yeah, and you can use a lot of energy trying to get out of pins, too.
Come on.
I genuinely feel like I've been in a car accident.
But we didn't just come here to warm up. We need a move, a quick surprise attack, one that came directly from the battlefield to the dojo. That move is a choke called Okiri Irijimi, and it's a killer. Literally.
I see a lot of veins in his head. Let's try that, Bill.
Getting dominant position is critical to securing the choke. Once you're positioned behind your opponent, you roll forward using your momentum multiplied by the leverage of your leg to bring him to his back. Then you wrap your legs around his body, forcing his arm upwards while your hand pulls his gi across his neck.
You use the strength of your legs to maintain your dominant position while you secure the choke. Just a few pounds of pressure on the collar of his gi is enough to reduce the blood flow to the brain to a trickle and end the match. Hold this move for 10 seconds and the fighter will black out. Hold it just a bit longer and he's dead.
Chokes like these are as devastating on the mat as they were on the battlefield, and are a common weapon in the MMA arsenal.
This stuff is great. I love grappling. Gi, no gi, whatever. I can't wait for the fight. This is getting good.
But now, we're headed to the ancient capital of Japan to learn some samurai bone-breaking techniques that are still in use on the street. To learn another move that will help us in our fight against a judo champion, we hopped on one of the fastest rides on the planet, the high-speed Shinkansen bullet train. It's been clocked at test speeds in excess of 275 miles an hour. Today, our destination is Japan's former imperial capital, Kyoto.
Surrounded on three sides by steep mountains, the easily defensible city became the seat of Japan's imperial court in 794. Kyoto remained the capital for over 1,000 years, during which it saw many bloody samurai battles for control of Japan. Then, during the Meiji Restoration, the capital was moved to Tokyo. Today, the streets of Kyoto are some of the safest in the world, And they're kept that way by the Kyoto police and their training in the fighting art of judo.
Inside the main dojo, we met Kyoto PD's head instructor, Murakami Sensei. Our translator was Robert Moran. Because there are virtually no guns in Japan, the police don't need to use guns themselves. Instead, they're able to use judo techniques to bring in the bad guys. In fact, the police were some of the first to popularize judo in Japan.
In 1886, the Tokyo Police Department hosted a contest between Jigoro Kano's judo and the city's most famous jiu-jitsu school to determine which style would be taught to the police. Judo crushed jiu-jitsu, winning 12 of 15 matches with one draw. Judo was chosen as the official style of the police and was catapulted to national popularity. We got changed to start training.